Okay, so today we're really diving into something that impacts pretty much all of us, right? Public education.
Right.
And you probably guessed it, we're not here to talk about, the usual stuff like, is homework important or standardized testing? We've got a whole stack of sources here, and they're taking a pretty critical look at the education system as a whole, really trying to uncover what they see as like hidden flaws in the system
Hmm.
and even some unintended consequences. What did you think when you first saw these sources?
Yeah, what I found really interesting was that they're not just kind of complaining about the usual stuff. It's not about, homework or standardized tests. They're really questioning the whole foundation of public education, like its structure. What impact does it have on, how we think, and even its role in society as a whole?
Yeah. One of the big arguments I saw, and kind of like a thread that went through a lot of these, was this idea that public schools, and we all know they're supposed to do good, right? They're
Yeah.
supposed to help us, but are they kind of acting like mini states?
Hmm.
Perpetuating these systems of control that we don't even realize are happening?
It's a powerful image, isn't it? It's like
Yes.
it really makes you think. And it really does get at this idea that's present in a lot of these readings of top-down power structures.
Mm.
Just like you would see in a government, there's central authority, right? Making all the decisions. So in this case, governments and administrators, they're deciding what's in the curriculum. They're just deciding the rules. And a lot of times teachers and students, they don't really get much say in that.
So let's break down this mini state idea a little bit more. Especially, this was really strong in Juan la impostura educativa. I don't know if I'm saying that right.
Yeah.
That author, they were not holding back, like, at all. And they really draw this comparison between the way that, like, actual states operate and then the way that schools are run. They even say, like, mandatory attendance. That's a big part of it.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
How does that play in
Yeah.
to the mini states idea?
Well, they're basically saying that that obligation to participate, even if you don't agree with, the way they do things, the values of the system, the methods they use, that's actually the first lesson in obedience,
Hmm.
right? Because it sets the stage for this dynamic where if you just go along with it, you don't make waves, you're going to do well. You're rewarded for that
Mhm.
rather than, questioning
Yeah.
or thinking critically.
And this totally connects to what we see in Three Los Tres Pilares. Again, I might be butchering these titles. This one was written by a teacher. And they talk about how, all this top-down decision-making, it can really squash any new ideas, any kind of innovation, even creativity in schools. And they even say a lot of times teachers, their hands are tied. They want to do right by their students, but they've got all these rules and procedures and policies they have to follow, so they can't really do what they need to for each individual student.
Yeah, it's like the system is basically designed to create a very specific type of citizen, one that doesn't cause trouble. They follow instructions. They don't really rock the boat.
It really makes you wonder, are we really helping people think for themselves? Are we helping them to actually go out and be active members of, a community, of society,
Yeah.
and be like engaged citizens?
Right.
And this gets to another huge theme that we saw a lot in these readings, that public education might actually be, maybe accidentally, but it might be creating this culture of entitlement. And it's almost like we're losing sight of hard work, working for what you earn.
Yeah, and to be clear, it's not that, everyone shouldn't feel valued
Right.
or have equal opportunities. That's not what we're saying at all.
Of course not.
But it's more this idea that we're losing sight of, you have to earn things,
Hmm.
and hard work pays off. Effort matters.
So instead of saying, hey, you put in the work, you put in the effort, you learned something, we're proud of you, it's more like, well, you showed up, so you get a gold star.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you know what? This actually connects to the critique of standardized learning that we see in for contextual version.
Yeah.
Again, title.
Yeah, they're kind of a mouthful.
They are. But this author, they're worried that we're focusing so much on standardized testing and, getting these specific scores that we're actually making it harder for people to develop their own original thoughts
Mm.
and be creative.
Right.
And those are the things you need to be successful in. Let's face it, a complicated world, a world that's constantly changing.
And it's only getting more complicated.
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
what are we really doing to prepare them?
Right. This author actually argues that when we say you have to memorize these specific things or you have to conform to this narrow way of thinking, that's not helpful.
Right.
That's actually stifling the kind of curiosity that we want, that intellectual curiosity. And it stops people from taking risks,
Ah.
which we need. That's how progress is made. That's how innovation happens.
It's like we're teaching kids to be really good at taking tests
Hmm?
and not to be, good thinkers.
And that raises a really important question. Are we preparing them for the real world? For what comes after the classroom? I'm not so sure.
It makes you wonder, are we getting so caught up in measuring, like trying to put numbers on everything
Yeah.
that we forget that learning should be like exciting? Like,
Right.
where's that love of learning for the sake of learning? And that takes us to what was it? Five,
De sentimiento?
Di sentimento. Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
And this whole idea that, like, how we're teaching, it doesn't really match up with how our brains actually learn, right?
Right. This author, they're saying we're making a big mistake. Like we're expecting kids, even teenagers, to think like adults. And developmentally, their brains just aren't there yet.
Yeah, it's like we wouldn't expect a little kid, like a toddler, to understand physics, rather.
Exactly.
But then we turn around and expect them to grasp these really abstract concepts in school or even, like, manage their emotions the same way that we as adults are supposed to.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a great analogy. And it makes you realize we have to understand, like, where kids are developmentally. What are they ready for? And then our teaching, it needs to match that. You need to be patient. You have to watch how they're learning, meet them where they're at. Because their brains, they just work differently, you know?
It makes you think maybe some of these problems we see in school, like kids who just don't care
Yeah.
or they're acting out in class, maybe it's because what we're asking them to do, it's just too much. They're not ready for it.
It's definitely something to consider. I mean, imagine you're constantly being told to do things that you're just not equipped to do yet.
Right.
You're not going to be too happy about it, are you?
Oh,
You're going to resist. You might
yeah,
get frustrated.
for sure.
So it's not about, just telling them, we'll catch up.
Right.
It takes time. It takes support.
Absolutely. And speaking of things that, maybe aren't helping, these sources, they don't give teachers a free pass either.
Oh, no.
They point out a lot of contradictions and, like, things that are happening maybe by accident within the system that start with, like, the teachers themselves.
Yeah, this is where it gets a little awkward, right?
Yeah.
Because we put teachers up on this
You're
pedestal.
supposed to be perfect.
Right. Like they're the role models. They have all the answers.
Mm.
But teachers, they came up through this system too.
Mm.
So they're bringing their own baggage, their own experiences, even their own biases into the classroom.
Yeah, and these sources, they get pretty specific about it, too.
Oh, yeah.
They talk about teachers who are like, respect me, discipline, you got to do this. But then they're not acting that way themselves.
It's that do as I say, not as I do kind of thing.
Exactly. Or they're pushing their students to, like, get good grades and achieve all these things. But maybe they didn't even do that themselves. Like, where's the.
Right. The hypocrisy is pretty obvious.
Yeah,
It's like telling someone to quit smoking while you're puffing away on a cigarette.
right. Your words, they mean nothing.
Exactly. Students see right through that. They see that what you're saying and what you're doing, it doesn't line up.
Yeah.
And that just makes them trust you less. They start to get cynical. And it even makes them question, like, what's the point of education at all if it's not even about, growing as a person?
Yeah. It's not just about, a few teachers who aren't being completely honest. It's that all these mixed messages, they have a real impact on how kids see the world, how they see themselves. Like, what am I
Yeah.
even doing here? And it makes you think about, what happens down the road if this is what kids are seeing, all these double standards. How does that affect how they view authority, what they think education is even for?
That's a really important point.
Mm.
These authors are saying this isn't just some problem contained within schools. It affects everything. What kind of society are we building if this is how we're teaching young people to see the world?
Right.
They're going to be disillusioned with education. They're not going to know how to think critically about what they see and hear out in the world.
Yeah, if nobody ever teaches you to question anything or to think for yourself, it's easy to get, tricked or to just accept whatever sounds good without really getting it.
Exactly. And if people don't learn to think critically, that affects everything.
Mm.
How we talk to each other about important issues. Can we solve the big problems that we're all facing? How do we even make good decisions if we're just reacting to things emotionally?
So it's not just, did you memorize the multiplication table or do you know these history facts? It's, are you ready to go out there and be a good citizen? Really participate.
Exactly. And that gets to the heart of what these authors really want us to think about. What is education really for? Has we lost sight of that somewhere along the way?
It's like we're so busy measuring things and giving grades, we forget that learning should be, it should be its own reward.
I like that. Yeah. These authors, they're not saying get rid of public schools completely, but they want us to take a hard look at what's not working. And maybe there are better ways to do things.
So where do we even go from here? If we agree that, yeah, these are real problems, how do we change things? How do we make education better? For kids, for teachers, for everyone.
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And there aren't any easy answers.
Yeah.
But these sources do make one thing clear. We have to admit there's a problem. We can't fix it if we don't. We have to be willing to ask those tough questions, to be open to new ways of doing things. That's how we make education really work for everyone.
Well said. This deep dive has given me a lot to think about, and I hope it's done the same for everyone listening.
It's been great exploring these ideas with you, and like you said, it's these tough conversations that are going to help us make education better.